I think the last real thing she said to me was a joke. Not one of those harmless, light ones either. This one cut, even if she meant it to sound casual. She looked at me from across the table, her fork paused midair, and said, "You could disappear for a week, and I probably wouldn't notice." Then she laughed. And I laughed too, because that's what you do when the person you love starts treating you like background noise. You smile through it, hoping they'll eventually hear the silence they're creating. But she didn't. Her name's Darla. Most people expect a southern drawl or some dramatic flair when they hear it, but she wasn't like that. She was polished, cold, a perfectionist in everything except affection. And I was foolish enough to take that as a challenge. I thought if I stayed steady enough, gentle enough, she'd soften. I thought she'd see how consistent love could be more powerful than dramatic passion. What a waste of thought. She didn't want steady. She wanted noise. She wanted someone who challenged her ego, who made her feel like her chaos was exciting, not exhausting. I didn't figure that out until I was already 5 years too deep. I was the kind of man who bought fresh oranges because she once mentioned liking the scent. The kind who downloaded her favorite podcast just to mention the latest episode in conversation, even if I didn't care about mindfulness or self-healing. I ironed the sleeves of her shirts, not because she asked, but because I knew she liked them crisp and precise. I wasn't trying to win her. I was just trying to stay chosen. But Darla didn't want quiet loyalty. She wanted to be adored loudly, publicly. She wanted men who looked dangerous in their photos and women who envied her for keeping them. I was never that man. I wore brown shoes with blue jeans. I asked people how they were and actually waited for the answer. And eventually, that wasn't good enough for her. The shift didn't happen all at once. That's the most painful part. If someone slaps you across the face, at least you know where you stand. But when they just stop smiling at your presence, stop laughing at your jokes, stop saying your name out loud, it's like being erased in real time, pixel by pixel. I remember once, around 8 months ago, she came home from a dinner party. I had waited up, not to check on her. I wasn't the jealous type. I just missed her. She came in smelling like wine and another man's cologne, not on her clothes, but in her hair. That's something most people wouldn't catch. But when you've spent years sleeping next to someone, you know the difference between their scent and someone else's fingerprints on it. Still, I said nothing. I just smiled and asked if she had fun. She said it was fine, while scrolling her phone and walking past me into the bathroom. The door closed. Lock clicked. Shower on. And I sat there with a fading glass of water, staring at the hallway light like it might give me an answer. Weeks passed. She started staying out longer. She stopped touching me, even accidentally. Her laugh in public was loud, dazzling, something she hadn't used at home in ages. And when I'd ask what was going on, she'd tilt her head and say, "Nothing's going on. Maybe you're just boring lately." That word, boring. It stung because it was exactly the thing I'd feared most. Not being wrong, not being weak, but being forgettable. Then, one afternoon, I remember it so vividly it feels branded into me. We were standing in the kitchen. I don't even know what started it. Maybe I asked if she could text when she was going to be late. Maybe I said something about how distant she felt. Doesn't matter. What mattered is the way she rolled her eyes, exhaled, and said, "Earn my attention, Orson. I'm not just going to hand it to you." It was the way she said it. Not in anger. Not even cruelty. She said it like someone reminding you of a basic life skill. Like I should have known better. Like it wasn't her job to care anymore unless I gave her a reason. And for the first time in years, I didn't say anything back. I didn't beg. I didn't explain. I didn't go buy flowers or try to make her laugh or suggest we reconnect. I just nodded once, quietly. And I turned around and walked into the other room. That was the day everything stopped, but neither of us knew it yet. She thought it was a win. She thought she'd put me in my place. What she didn't realize was that in that moment, I buried every piece of myself that was still trying to reach for her. I stopped fighting for someone who had already packed her exit in her smile. That night, she asked what I wanted for dinner. First time in weeks she even bothered. I said, "I'm not hungry." She asked if I was okay. I said, "Never better." She kissed me on the cheek, absent-mindedly, and walked away. And in that moment, something in me finally understood. You can love someone and still decide to leave them emotionally. And so I did. She just hasn't noticed yet. There's a kind of silence that builds in a home, not sudden, not explosive. It's the kind that accumulates in layers. It gathers in forgotten glances, in phrases that go unanswered, in the moment she places her phone between you and her face without realizing she's already dismissed you. I had grown used to that silence, adjusted to it like one adjusts to living near a highway. You forget it's there, until someone points it out, and suddenly you hear nothing else. After that day in the kitchen, when she told me to earn her attention, I stopped speaking unless I needed to. Not to make a point, not to be passive-aggressive, but because I realized every word I gave her was a gift she no longer valued. And I was done handing out pieces of myself for free. Strangely, she seemed lighter after that, as if my emotional retreat gave her permission to feel unbothered. She stopped pretending. No more half-smiles or polite little check-ins. If she was staying late at work, she didn't text. If she had plans, she told me while looking at her reflection in the mirror, not at me. There was a night she came home in a black dress I'd never seen before. Hair curled, makeup perfect. She slipped off her heels like it was any other night and walked past me, humming. That was the moment I realized I hadn't been included in her world in a long time. I was furniture. Functional, silent, and always in the same spot. I began watching her differently. Not obsessively. Just curiously, like you'd watch a stranger on a train who looks familiar but never meets your eye. She started smiling at her phone more. Not giggling, smiling. That content, slow sort of smile that used to be mine. Her laptop stayed open late at night. She played music in the shower again. She used to do that when she was in love with me. Now, she did it while texting someone whose name I didn't know, and who probably thought of me as the guy she's still technically married to. The thing is, I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was numb, and that numbness was freeing. When someone drains you long enough, you stop bleeding. I started spending more time in my office. Not working. Just sitting, reading old journals, watching the dust settle in sunbeams. I'd forgotten what it was like to hear myself think without trying to keep her interested. And the thoughts that came weren't loud, but they were honest. I remembered how she used to talk about her boss. First with admiration, then with frustration, then not at all, which was telling. I remembered the weekend conference she went to in Denver 3 months earlier, the one she said was exhausting and completely unremarkable. Yet she came back glowing and distant. I didn't confront her. I wasn't trying to catch her. I was just observing. Observing the final act of a play I hadn't realized we were in. And all the while, she kept moving through the house like a person rehearsing her lines, polite, composed, emotionally vacant. There was one evening that stood out. She came in late. No excuses. Just long day. She opened a bottle of wine, poured herself a glass, and asked if I wanted any. That was rare. I said no. She raised the glass, half smiled, and said, to quiet nights. I raised my water bottle and said, to endings that take their time. She didn't react. She just sipped and turned away, walking barefoot down the hall like she hadn't even heard what I'd said. But I meant it. I meant every word. She didn't know it yet, but I had already begun removing myself from the equation. Not physically. Not yet. But mentally, emotionally, I was packing boxes in my head. I was cataloging all the ways she told me, without ever saying it out loud, that she was already gone. And the only reason she hadn't walked out that door was because she assumed I never would. But I would. And when I did, I wouldn't slam the door. I wouldn't leave a letter or a long speech. I wouldn't need to. Because when someone tells you to earn their attention, and you realize they're no longer worth yours, that's the beginning of freedom. And freedom, it has a quiet sound, like a door closing behind you that you never plan to open again. I remember once, maybe a year into the marriage, I got food poisoning so bad I passed out in the bathroom. When I woke up, she was sitting next to me on the cold tile floor, holding a wet cloth to my forehead. Her hair was still pinned up from dinner, and she looked exhausted, but she was there. She'd whispered, "I'm not going anywhere." And I believed her. Funny how promises fade. They don't break with a sound, they just dissolve until you forget they were ever made. Now, it's hard to picture that version of her. That version of me, too. These days I catch my reflection and don't always recognize the man looking back. He's quieter. A little smaller around the eyes. But not bitter. Just emptied out. Lately I've been sleeping in the guest room. Not because of a fight. Just inertia. She didn't ask why. I didn't offer an explanation. And that suited both of us more than I care to admit. It was easier that way, two people orbiting the same walls without colliding. Like strangers who remember each other's birthdays but forget what the other person laughs at. She started closing the bedroom door at night. Not locking it. Just gently shutting it, the way you close the lid on a box you no longer want to open. And every time I walked past that door, I found myself staring at the handle, wondering why I still felt like knocking. I've become a man who listens for her footsteps when she comes home, not because I'm excited, but because I need the rhythm to match what I expect. If she's light on her feet, she's alone. If she's dragging, she's tired. If she pauses in the entryway too long, she's whispering to someone she doesn't want me to hear. These are the details I file away now. This is the language I speak to myself. I don't ask her where she's been anymore. I don't need to. The truth is loud in what she doesn't say. It's in the new lipstick on the passenger seat visor. The sudden interest in Pilates on Thursdays. The small, repeated lie that her phone battery dies every time she goes out. And here's the strangest part. I don't feel angry. I feel curious. Not about who he is or what they do, but about her. About how a person decides that someone who once held them through food poisoning is now unworthy of honesty. About what part of herself she had to silence to lie that easily. About whether she notices how much of me she's erased. There was a version of me that would have fought, who would have confronted her, laid it all out, demanded truth, maybe even begged for the woman I married to come back. But that man left quietly, sometime last spring, I think. He didn't slam a door or write a note. He just gave up and walked into the space I now live in, where peace looks like surrender and silence feels like dignity. We still eat dinner sometimes. Not always, but enough for it to be a pattern. She'll mention a coworker, ask if I've seen the news. I'll nod, maybe add a sentence or two. We're civil, polite, efficient. Two people sharing utilities and pretending not to notice the collapse happening between them. She doesn't realize I've already begun. Planning. Not to leave like in movies, with a suitcase and some dramatic exit. No, that would give her too much to react to. Too much attention. I'll leave slowly. Emotionally. First, by no longer trying to earn what should have been freely given. Then, by quietly detaching from the future I once saw her in. Eventually, even the routines will belong only to me. She'll notice later, months, maybe a year, that I was gone long before the paperwork ever landed on her desk. Because love doesn't always end in explosions. Sometimes, it ends in soft detachment. A man folding laundry for the last time without telling anyone it's the last. A phone wallpaper changed at midnight. A contact renamed Marlene turned simply to M. She asked me once, early on, what I feared most. I told her, being forgotten while still standing in the same room. And here we are. The hallway creaked last night. Not loud. Just a small, specific sound. You wouldn't notice it unless you were listening for it, which I was. 3 a.m., eyes open, staring at the ceiling in the guest room that's never really felt like mine. The moonlight was silver through the blinds, cutting lines across the wall like prison bars. That hallway creak? It used to mean she was coming to check on me. Or just needed something. Or maybe couldn't sleep either. Now, it meant nothing. She doesn't check anymore. And I don't expect her to. That space between our rooms isn't physical anymore. It's metaphor. It's metaphor wrapped in quiet, stretched between two people who stopped speaking full sentences months ago. I could scream and she might not come. She could cry and I might not hear. That's what we've become, two muted stories inside one structure. I sometimes try to remember what her voice sounds like when she's vulnerable. Not annoyed, not dismissive, but soft, nervous, real. It's harder than I thought. I can recall the pitch, the rhythm, the way she used to say my name when she needed comfort, but it's like watching an old tape through water. The image warps. The memory fogs. There's something deeply cruel about forgetting someone while they're still sleeping 2 rooms away. And yet, she isn't cruel. That's the strange part. She isn't mean. She hasn't yelled. She hasn't thrown anything, accused me of anything, stormed out in a fit of rage. She's just drifting, every day further, like someone being pulled slowly by a current and not resisting. And me? I'm standing on the shore, hands in my pockets, watching her fade. Some nights she doesn't come home until after midnight. When she does, she moves through the house like a ghost, keys on the hook, shoes off without a sound, straight to the bedroom without even opening the fridge. I hear everything. I lie there, hearing it all. The zipper of her purse. The clink of her phone hitting the nightstand. The sigh, always the sigh. And I count every second between the sounds like a metronome in an empty music room. I haven't asked where she's going. I won't. Not because I don't want to know, but because I already know enough. There's someone. I don't need a name. I don't need a face. The absence of intimacy is a fingerprint. The missing tenderness is a confession. What would a confrontation give me? A reaction? A performance? No, thank you. I'd rather feel nothing than feel like a spectator in my own humiliation. So instead, I've been organizing small things. Quietly. Subtly. Not packing. Not yet. But preparing. Digital passwords moved. Bank notifications rerouted. A post office box I haven't used in years reactivated under a name only I remember. It's not revenge. It's protection. Like putting up a storm window before a hurricane, even if the sky is still clear. You don't wait until the roof's gone. And while I do these things, I talk to myself, not out loud, but in memory. I revisit old versions of us, like photo albums that only exist in my mind. That one night in Vermont when we got caught in the rain. Her laugh. Soaked, messy, free. Or the day she got the job she swore she wasn't qualified for, and we danced in the kitchen with cheap champagne. Those moments still exist, but only for me. She's already deleted them. Rewritten the script where I played the background extra, not the lead. But here's what she doesn't realize. She thinks she holds the ending. That she gets to decide when and how this story concludes. But endings aren't owned, they emerge. They arrive quietly, often long before either person notices. Like mold behind a wall, like a light bulb that dims so slowly you think your eyes are failing. She has no idea that I've already said goodbye to her in ways that can't be undone. I've stopped turning toward the bedroom door when she enters. I've stopped listening for her keys in the lock. I've stopped picturing her in my future plans. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. There's only so long you can pretend someone loves you before you start to suffocate. And now, I crave the air more than I crave her. That's how I know this isn't a phase. This is the beginning of something final. And all it took was the quiet realization that I no longer miss her when she leaves the room. I don't put a second mug out in the morning anymore. That was the first quiet decision. For years, I made 2 coffees, hers stronger, mine sweeter. I'd leave hers on the counter next to her keys, not because she asked, but because that's what love looked like in a house like ours. These days, I make 1 cup. I sit with it. I drink it slowly. Sometimes I even pour it out unfinished, just to remind myself that the gesture is gone now. That there's no one watching. That no one's waiting on the other end of it. I stopped recording movies I thought she'd like. It sounds small, but that one hit me harder than I expected. I used to see a trailer and imagine her face. I'd think, she'll love that character, or that's her kind of story. Now I scroll past without a flicker of that instinct. It's like the muscle that cared about her happiness shriveled when it stopped being used. She doesn't notice these things. Of course not. Her world has shifted. Her hours are full, her phone is always buzzing, and the smile she used to wear around me now belongs to someone else, someone who makes her feel new again. I don't even resent it anymore. I just study it, like I'm cataloging a new species. Here we have the version of her that exists without me. Notice how free she moves. How little she glances back. Last Friday, she stood in the doorway before leaving. She asked if I needed anything from the store. That was rare. I think she was trying to simulate normalcy. I said, "No, I'm all set." She nodded, not waiting for elaboration. Just left. When the door closed, I realized she hadn't looked at me the entire time. She'd spoken while checking her purse, adjusting her sleeve, glancing toward her car. That moment wasn't about me. It was just a script she'd repeated for years, now stripped of meaning. That night, I opened her side of the closet and stood there for a long time. Not touching anything. Not snooping. Just breathing in the faint trace of her perfume and something newer I couldn't name. Her hangers were slightly out of place. That wasn't like her. She used to be precise, colors grouped, sleeves aligned. Now they leaned unevenly, like her life had tilted towards someone else and the closet hadn't caught up. She came home late. Not quite midnight. I was still awake, though she didn't know that. I heard her heels on the tile, then the careful way she opened the bedroom door, quiet, practiced. She didn't turn the light on. That was new. She used to flood the room without thinking. But now, she's considerate in the way people are when they're guilty. Not ashamed, just aware that they might be watched. I didn't move. I listened to the zipper of her dress. The hanger sliding. The soft thump of her phone landing face down on the nightstand. Then silence. I pictured her lying there with her back to the wall, eyes wide open, pretending to sleep. And me, just one room away, very much awake. It's strange how you can grieve a marriage that hasn't ended yet. I still take the trash out. Still wash the towels. Still check the mail like a routine deserves to be preserved. But the emotional weight behind those acts is gone. I do them like a houseguest who knows he's overstayed, quietly cleaning up so no one complains. I keep the lights dim. I turn the volume low. I move around her like fog, present but untouchable. And now, I've started giving things away. Books I don't love anymore. T-shirts I no longer wear. Trinkets from vacations we took together that feel more like museum pieces than memories. I'm not preparing to move out. I'm just making space. Not physical space, mental, emotional. I'm clearing the shelves where hope used to live, so I don't keep accidentally setting things there. She hasn't noticed. She probably won't. And the truth is, I no longer hope she will. There was a moment last night, I think it was around 9:30, where she stood in the hallway adjusting a necklace I've never seen before, and I realized I was holding my breath. Not because she looked beautiful. She did. But because I didn't know whether I was allowed to say it anymore. She was humming under her breath, distracted. The kind of distracted you become when you're thinking about something far away from where you're standing. I used to be that faraway thought. Now I'm just the man leaning in the doorway, measuring what I'm still permitted to notice. She caught me looking at her. Briefly. No smile. Just that flicker of acknowledgement. Enough to say, I know you're there, but not enough to invite anything more. And I gave her what she wanted. Nothing. I turned and walked into the kitchen like I hadn't been standing there trying to remember what her skin used to smell like after a shower. It's strange how quiet things become when the person you live with doesn't want to know your thoughts anymore. You start narrating your life in your head like an internal broadcast. Today, I folded the laundry she left on the machine. Today, I watched her walk past me 3 times and never ask how I'm doing. You don't say it aloud. There's no point. You just take notes no one will ever read. I've started rehearsing what I'll do if she ever decides to talk. Really talk. Not the surface stuff. Not, what do you want for dinner? Or, did you pay the gas bill? But the real questions. The ones that echo. Where did we go? When did you stop being the man I loved? Are you still waiting for me to come back? Or have you already let go? I don't think those questions will ever come. But if they do, I've got a silence ready for her that's deeper than any answer. The other day, I caught myself rewriting our story in my head, not to remember it, but to survive it. I cut out the soft parts. I delete the scenes where she cried into my chest and told me I made her feel safe. I skipped the weekends we didn't even leave the house because we were too busy loving each other in the smallest ways. I pretend none of it mattered. It's easier that way. Less contrast between what was and what is. She has this new way of holding her phone closer to her chest, screen tilted in. She used to scroll openly, laugh at random things, hand me her phone without a second thought. Now she protects it. Like it holds secrets that would explode on contact. I don't ask. I don't look. I don't want to need evidence for what I already know in my bones. I saw her type out a message the other day and then delete it before sending. Just a few lines of text, then backspace, gone. I wonder what it said. Who it was for. What piece of her was about to break off from me entirely in that one unsent message. She still sleeps on her side of the bed. Still uses the same pillow. Still turns the fan on low. But she doesn't dream with me anymore. I know that because she used to say things in her sleep. Little things. Sometimes funny, sometimes soft. Now, nothing. Stillness. Like even her unconscious mind is done talking to me. And through all of it, I've learned how to nod without meaning it. Smile without feeling it. Say goodnight like it's not the end of anything. That's the part that eats away at me most, how natural the pretending has become. I've become an expert at invisibility. The kind where I still cook dinner, but only for one. Still fold blankets, but never tuck her in. Still hear her laugh from the other room, and wonder if it's for someone else's words. And every time I want to ask her if she misses me, I remember, you don't ask a storm why it's raining. You just get out of the way. There's something sacred about the quiet before someone leaves the house. That in-between space. One hand on the door, one foot still inside the world you built together. This morning she stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair in slow, careful strokes. I was behind her. I didn't speak. I watched her part her hair differently than she used to. Her scent was different, too. Citrus now, sharper. She used to smell like vanilla and paperbacks. I never told her I liked that. I assumed she knew. You assume things when you're close to someone, until they start building new lies out of everything you never said. There were at least 11 things I wanted to say. I counted. I wanted to ask where she went last night when she said she was clearing her head. I wanted to tell her that her laugh is different now, tighter, more practiced, like it belongs to someone she's trying to impress. I wanted to ask when we became people who stop talking halfway through sentences and don't bother finishing. I wanted to ask if she still keeps the photo of us in her wallet. I wanted to know if I've become a shadow in the background of her day, or if I've already been edited out completely. I wanted to tell her that I saw the message preview when her phone lit up, and that I looked away not because I trust her, but because I no longer want to know. I wanted to ask if she even notices when I'm not in the room anymore. I wanted to tell her I miss being touched for no reason. I wanted to say I'm scared that if I left, she wouldn't stop me. I wanted to ask if she thinks this silence is normal. And I wanted to tell her I don't feel like her husband anymore. I feel like her unpaid roommate. But I said none of it. Instead, I reached for the keys on the counter and said, "I'll be back later." She said, "Okay." Just that. One word. No question. No hesitation. Like I told her I was stepping outside for a moment and not silently planning my eventual absence from the rest of her life. I walked out into a soft drizzle. The kind of rain that doesn't soak your clothes but stays with you anyway. I stood there for a while, letting it collect on my shoulders. It felt like something. Not clarity. Not closure. Just something. And that's more than I've felt in weeks. When I came back, the living room was clean. Her glass was in the sink. A candle burned on the table. The house looked peaceful. That kind of curated peace you find in staged homes, too clean to be lived in, too perfect to be real. She was in the bedroom with the door closed. She didn't say welcome back. I sat on the edge of the couch and stared at nothing for a while. I wondered what it would feel like to just leave one day without packing. No notes. No explanations. Just silence. Maybe I'd go to that small town in Oregon we once said we'd visit. Get a job where no one asks questions. Let my name fade into something softer. But instead, I sat there until it got dark. Then I got up, turned off the candle, locked the door, brushed my teeth, lay down. She didn't come say goodnight. She hasn't in weeks. And as I stared up at the ceiling, I realized I don't want an apology anymore. I don't want a confession. I don't want a fight or closure or a reason. I just want her to notice the weight of what she let die. But she won't. So I'm learning how to carry it alone. I woke up before the sun today. Not because of noise. Not because of her moving around the house. Not because of restlessness. I woke up because my mind was finally still. And that was new. That was unfamiliar in the best possible way. For the first time in months, maybe years, there was no weight sitting on my chest. No mental inventory of what was broken. No endless loop of what if and why not me. I made a single cup of coffee and didn't feel the usual ache when I only needed one mug. I sat by the window, opened the blinds, and let the first light hit my face without flinching. Something had shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was just quiet and full. She didn't come out of the bedroom until much later. Hair messy. Eyes tired. She walked past me like she always does, except this time. I didn't look for meaning in her silence. I didn't scan her expression for signs. I didn't feel responsible for her distance. I didn't need anything from her anymore. That's what peace feels like, I think. When you stop needing someone to validate your pain. When you realize the person you've been mourning is already gone, and you survived their absence even while they were still in the next room. I told her, softly but clearly, I've made a decision. She blinked like she hadn't expected me to speak first. About what? I'm going to leave. Not with anger. Not to punish you. I just don't live here anymore. Not really. And I think we both know that. She stood there for a moment, not ready with a script. No rage. No denial. Just a silence that said she already felt it too, long before I said it out loud. I never meant for it to get like this, she whispered. I know, I said. And I meant it. And that was it. No bags were packed that morning. No scene. No raised voices. I didn't walk out the door with finality. I just took a deep breath that felt like mine again and stepped into the first day that didn't belong to both of us. Now, it's been 3 months. I moved into a small place not far away, close to the trees, quiet, with uneven hardwood floors and a front porch that catches the sunrise just right. I cook for one and never feel the absence of a second plate. I read again. I take walks in the evening. I've started sketching, not because I'm good at it, but because I don't need to be. I'm finally doing things that don't require permission or applause. And sometimes, I still think about her. Not with bitterness. Just as a memory that taught me something. She was a chapter, not a sentence. And I was never meant to be the ending she needed. I was just one version of her story, and that's okay. Some days, I wake up with music in my head again. Some nights, I talk out loud in the kitchen just to hear the sound of my own voice. Not because I'm lonely. Because I like it. Because I'm remembering how it feels to be someone I actually want to come home to. I didn't get the apology. I didn't get the explanation. But I got something better. I got myself back. And this version of me? He doesn't need to earn anyone's attention.